This is the first part of an extensive interview with Sam McCurdy BSC, cinematographer of Game of Thrones, Lost in Space, and many other movies and TV series.
The Cinema 5D virtual show is brought to you by B&H, the professional source for all your video needs. CVP, the leading specialist in creative cine, video, and photo solutions. Sattler, set your ideas in motion. Blackmagic Design, creating amazing solutions for film, post-production, and television. And Tilta, arm your camera.
Welcome everybody to our Cinema 5D virtual show, our virtual replacement for the NAB that never happened. One of the good things of the fact that we are sitting at home right now and not being able to go to trade shows or actually be on set is the fact that amazing people like Sam McCurdy are also sitting at home, people who are usually on set and never available for interviews. So it's my pleasure to welcome Sam to this talk.
Very kind, very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Yeah, great that you are taking the time. So you are a BSc cinematographer. You're probably most well known for a very famous Game of Thrones episode.
Seems, yes.
The Battle of Blackwater. I think it was second or third season or something like this.
Second season, yes. I think it was episode 9, second season. I think it was it was an interesting one to get. I don't think even at the time they knew what they wanted to do with it. I think everybody, it was written by George Martin himself. It was a huge episode, and we were kind of given free rein to just go out and make it. They just kind of went, "Yeah, go and make it as big as you can," and we said, "Okay."
But let's start at the beginning. I just want to get a little bit of a background. How did you get started in filmmaking? What inspired you to become a cinematographer?
I think that goes back to childhood. I mean, I'm sure everybody you speak to, I'm sure for yourself as well. It's we all talk about being kids and having memories of like photographs and all that sort of thing. But it really was for me. I studied art through school. I did fine art and photography at college, always knowing that I wanted to head in the direction of the film industry. I think at college I wasn't quite sure what. Was it going to be as a cinematographer? I knew I enjoyed cameras. I knew that I liked photography, obviously. So it was important to get into the camera department. But that's, goodness me, that's 25, nearly 30 years ago or something now. And I was probably very naive at the time and probably thought, yeah, I'm going to be brilliant. I'm going to be amazing. I'm going to do this and this. There was a lot of hard work. I started off as a PA in the camera department and slowly worked my way up as a loader and then a first AC operator. And then, finally was given my break as a cinematographer with a local. At the time, I lived in the northeast of England and was given an opportunity to light a movie for a director friend of mine. And I said, yes. Why the hell not? I give it a go. It's been one of, what you've been working for all of your life kind of thing. And thankfully have never looked back. I think there's, certainly the working through the camera department gave me an understanding at the time. And obviously it was all film back then. Back then makes me sound ancient. I'm not that old. But yes, it was. There was a lot to learn. There was physically a lot to learn. It wasn't, having grown up with stills cameras, and yes, a variation of lenses, and maybe a variation on film stocks. Suddenly, everything was bigger and heavier, and just looked more daunting. So I always appreciate the kind of the man hours I put in working in the camera department, because it made a big difference then. It made a big difference. The only way to really learn the craft was to be in it. And you had to learn what film stocks did. You had to learn so many different lenses. You had to learn that so many intricate little moving parts within the camera department. It made a big difference to then becoming a cinematographer.
And at that time, the mistakes were also a lot more expensive, right? Because of the film stocks.
It's the one thing you learn very, very quickly as a loader: never ever flash those mags. But it was a good time. It was a good time to be in the camera department. You could see the early changes approaching with digital. You could see the kind of the streamlining of the department itself, and you could see technology, not as a distant horizon for a lot of people, but you could see technology on the horizon there, kind of beckoning everybody, going, come on, we're not far away, so for me it was a really exciting time to be in the camera department, a really exciting time to be making that transition into being a cinematographer. I maybe shot 6 or 7 feature films plus countless TV shows on film before digital really started to make its move, and then it gave you a really good grasp of how to approach digital. Gave you a good sensibility of how to then approach digital.
How did you, are you somebody who thinks that a formal education in cinematography is essential? Because there's this ongoing discussion where there's one side that says, well, you should go to film school, and the others are like, no, you don't need film school. And I never get there's never a clear answer to that, if it's really, because I feel, I went to a media school with a focus on film, but I feel like what I learned there didn't really help me that much in practice on set, but it did give me some background that I was able to incorporate.
I think I'd agree with you there. I think film school will always be good for people who feel they want to be educated in a film manner. I think the basis of anybody wanting to get into production at any level is do you have an eye for a story? Whether it be in drama, whether it be in documentaries, whether it be in commercials. Everything I think we do is driven by story. And I think that's where a film school can be good for people, because it can help them develop their storytelling aspects. If you were to say, do you need it to be a great cinematographer? Probably not anymore. I think the great thing, and I was saying this just recently in an interview, the great thing about digital is it allows everybody the chance to do it. And the nature of there being so much content out there, the public now decides who's a good storyteller and not. So, and long may it continue. I applaud people who want to grab the first camera they can and try and photograph, and photograph something for television. If it works, brilliant. If it doesn't, maybe it's a good lesson for them without having gone to a film school, because film schools are expensive. And if you can pick up a second-hand red camera or a second-hand 7D, 5D, anything that's, you can pick something like that up for a lot less money than a film school and try it. And you'll find out yourself if you're any good at telling stories. And then maybe then you can approach a film school. I think the good thing with a lot of film schools now is they're looking at their candidates now with that storytelling mind already as an idea. And I think that's important for film schools. I think it's important that if they're going to take in a lot of people, a lot of new people, they should be taking in people that they feel can add to what we do for a living. So it's, as you said, it's a difficult one to answer. Film schools can be fantastic. I've got a lot of friends who went to a lot of film schools and have done very, very well for themselves and are amazing storytellers. I often wonder if they would still be amazing storytellers if they didn't go to film school. They probably would, and they probably find a way into the industry anyway.
I guess a lot has to do with getting into the network, because when you're young and you just have the passion to become a filmmaker, but you don't know anybody in the industry, of course, it's a way of getting to know people.
I think one of the interesting things now, especially with platforms like YouTube, I think they're really interesting platforms for young people who want to just try their skills to see if it works, to see if they can tell a story. You could go out, shoot, edit, and upload something to YouTube in a matter of days, and you'll soon find out if people like it. And if they do, maybe gives you the impetus to then go and do another one, and then maybe try and get a better camera to do the next one, and then maybe a better cast to do the one after that. It's a good time to be doing what we do. And that filmmaking can be at any level. It can be, some of the documentaries you see now, that certainly some of the ones you see on the bigger platforms, the Netflix and the Amazons, have incredible production value and incredible photography, but it's still based in storytelling. So I don't think money and kit is necessarily the kind of be all and end all for people who want to be able to share their stories.
I think kit is one of those things that a lot of people just grasp to, because it's the one thing that you can define, it's like, if
Absolutely.
I buy that camera, like a lot of people think that then they are better cinematographers, but they're not.
I'm sure we all remember the day the first 5D came out, and everybody thought it was the greatest thing that Canon had ever invented. And yeah, it was a great camera. It was a great all-round camera. But it didn't suddenly then make people great filmmakers. It didn't make great documentary makers or commercials directors or cinematographers. It was just a really good bit of kit. And if you gave it to the right people who could use it, then it did its job. But yeah, the bit of kit doesn't make the product good.
Yeah, you still need talent and know how to use it.
Exactly. You need to know how to use it, and you need to be able to tell a story. I think that's still the most important thing. And I swear, you could go and make if you've got a really good story, if you shot it on an iPhone, people will watch it. If it's something that can draw an audience in, if it's a story that people want to hear, then you could shoot it on anything and people will watch it.
Talking about storytelling and also cinematography, what do you think were your biggest influences? Because, if I look at your work, it's really, the genres are so widespread. You do science fiction, it's fantasy, it's horror, it's so many different things. And it all has a kind of a bigness feel to it. It seems like you like to do big movies or big scenes.
I think again, it's going back to what I grew up with. I think I was very, very lucky as a teenager into 20s. I grew up with cinema being at its biggest. The big blockbuster. I know we have serious big blockbusters now, but the kind of birth of the summer blockbuster was the late 80s, the 90s, the Bruckheimer and Simpson, the Tony Scotts, all of that sort of thing, where you had the Top Guns and the Rocks, and all of those were suddenly, they were the fodder that you had. You had, the movies that had made a lasting impression on me. Obviously, were the Star Wars movies, the Indiana Jones movies, that were just big and scaled, but they were great stories, but they were also entertaining. And I still feel that that's one of the things. It's one of the things I still personally enjoy about filmmaking, is making something that is fun. That you get that first script and you read it and go, oh my God, that's so the sort of thing that I would want to watch. I think that's why I enjoy bouncing around genres. I grew up with, started on low budget horror movies, but I love low budget horror movies. I then, progress into, sci-fi and period and costume drama and things like that, because they're all things that I genuinely love watching, and to be a part of. They're really good fun. So yeah, I think enjoyment and entertainment is still, I think, a very valid part of what we do.
Yeah, and also I guess keeping it fresh with different kinds of productions, because I think it's very easy to get stuck within one route of doing things in every profession, but in ours as well. I mean, there's people who, like lamenting about being on, like a TV news cameraman for 20 years, and others are, doing the same TV series forever.
It's true. It's so true. I think, and it's really important to go out and try. I think I've been very lucky in the jobs that have come my way, whether that be through directors or producers or cast or whoever, where you've been offered a project because you've fought for it, or whether you've been offered a project because somebody's come to you because they like you as a person. It's good to test yourself. I think it's always good to push yourself. It would be far too easy to spend, the rest of your life doing the same thing and be safe. And yes, you'd earn a good wage and you'd be taken care of. But I certainly personally, I like to feel that I need to be tested on every job I do. I try and find something that you kind of go, okay, I need to push myself with this and see if I can make this work. Sometimes you fail, but again, sometimes that's the most fun bits. You find out the things that you haven't been able to do, and you go, "Damn, that didn't work, but it might work for this when this next project comes along." Or I failed doing this, but it'll work perfectly for this. It's all about. It's got to be about progressing. It's got to be about pushing yourself.
I mean, TV series have come a long way in their production value over the past 10, 15 years, I would say. And you're somebody who has shot a lot of feature films, but you've particularly shot a lot of TV series.
Yep.
How do you think the two ways of working compare? I mean, how do you manage to, under the pressure of a TV series, to still maintain that level of, making it look like a movie, now that everything is kind of moving to streaming now more than ever, especially this crazy times. I mean, everybody's sitting at home. So, I mean, even more so, TV series are supposed to look like movies, but you have a lot more pressure on set, I guess. So how do you work with that?
You do. I think a lot of it is a mindset. I think a lot of it is how you approach your work. I think I'll always go into work wanting to do my best work. I'll always go into work wanting to deliver what I think is right for the story, what is right for the script. And then as far as the pressure of, because yes, you're so right, the difference in schedules alone, you've got anything between six weeks and 6 months to shoot a movie. So, that amount of time to shoot 2 hours worth of screen time. And then with a TV show, for something like Game of Thrones, I think we had 10 days to shoot just over an hour's worth of television. So yes, the schedule's insane, but as long as you go in knowing what you want to do, as long as you go in well prepped and ready, knowing that if somebody changes their mind, you can adapt to it, I think that's really important to manage the television schedules, is just knowing what you want to succeed and how to get it to that point, how to get it to the point that everybody wants, without wasting time, without wasting money, and without wasting the energy. Because I was asked this just recently, that the balance between the two. And the truth is, there's a really incredible energy on a television set that drives you to get to where you want to go, because everybody knows you can't spend 3 hours rehearsing. You can't spend 3 hours then lighting. Everything's got to be done super quickly. Everything's got to be done really instinctively. But it still has to look as good as a feature film, like you say. So it's important to, I feel it's important to always go in there knowing where you want to get to, and and feeding off the energy of that. The whole crew normally on certainly on television schedules are, buoyed to get to that final product, and it's important to feed off that. The minute you kind of relax or think you've got it is the minute you get shot in the back.
When you worked on Game of Thrones, you were, like I think you shot that one episode, right? So you kind of
Yeah.
got into the whole thing when the look was already established, but you
Yes.
still, it's probably one of the most challenging episodes because of that big battle and it's very dark and tons of actors and extras and everything. So how is it to kind of settle into an established look rather than creating something from scratch? Is that difficult? Or you're just thrown into the water?
It's a really, really interesting question, and I think even more so in this day and age when there's a lot of big episodic television, and the majority of episodic television is normally split between at least 2, 3, or more cinematographers. But the truth of it is, and especially true with Game of Thrones, is the producers believed in their show. So they employ people that they think are going to deliver something good for their show. And they actually gave us complete freedom to do whatever we wanted. And I swear that's what drives everybody, especially on Game of Thrones. I swear that's what drives everybody to make it the show that it was, because you were given the freedom to make it as good as you wanted. You were never told, okay, this is how it looks, this is how we shoot it, this is, no director was ever told how to direct, no cinematographer was ever told how to light. I remember, I think I had one meeting very early on with Dan and David, excuse me, and the only words of advice they had for me were, Game of Thrones can never be too dark. I was like, okay, fair enough. I can do that.
There was an episode, though, I think the last season, which was extremely dark.
There was. Shot by a very, very, very dear friend of mine, Fabian Wagner, who's I've spoken to a lot of times, and we bumped into each other actually in Prague just a few months ago. Yes, for a lot of people, they seemed to think that it was too dark. I watched it on my TV.
I loved it.
Thought
yeah. It's beautiful. It was a daring decision for.
It was incredible, because that I feel is where television is now. I think television is definitely it'll never take the place of cinema, but it certainly fulfills a need for big scale in your own living room. And I think what Game of Thrones did, and what Fabian did in particular with that episode, was he pushed it as far as he could. And I loved it. And I know so many other people that loved it. For the 1 or 2 people that didn't, meh.
It was amazing. I just think a lot of people, unfortunately, saw it, in a low resolution, highly compressed through their TVs, maybe in SD or something crazy. And then it's like...
Of course. And we don't, as I'm sure every DP that you ever speak to, and yourself included, I'm sure we photograph things the way we feel they should be photographed. And it then, once you put it out there, it then becomes a matter of taste. And we can't judge people on taste, because people would then, my taste might be completely different to yours. The guy next door to me's taste is probably completely different to both of ours. So you can't judge people on taste.
Well, and in days like these, it's good to stir a discussion because more people will end up seeing it. Yeah.
Very true, very, very true. I'm sure it's doing. I'm sure this situation is doing a lot of streamers a lot of good at the moment.